Well, let's bring in New York State Republican Party Chairman Ed Cox. Mr. Cox, great to have you on set with us this morning.
Good to be on board.
All right, so the big question is, could either Donald Trump or Senator Ted Cruz, could they realistically win in New York?
Yes, absolutely. Republican Party has a huge tailwind behind us in this election. You saw in the last November 3 elections when we outdid the polls in Kentucky. Matt Bevin wasn't supposed to win the governorship, and he outdid the polls by 10% when the votes came in. Same in our local elections. We did much better. There's a huge Republican groundswell going on that's going to and especially if the markets are predicting what's going to go on in the future with the economy, that is a sour economy. The president's party suffers from that. We're going to do very well, and any Republican candidate could carry New York.
The timing of having you here is so great because we're just a couple days off of the last GOP debate in Charleston, and then we're just a couple weeks away from Iowa. Could you just characterize for us this race right now? Donald Trump continues to drive the conversation. He continues to dominate the polls. Where's this going?
Well, it's not who dominates the polls now. It's who's going to win Iowa, who's going to win New Hampshire, what happens in South Carolina, and that's the excitement that's happening.
But I mean, but when you look at Donald Trump, 33%, this is the latest Wall Street Journal NBC national poll. The margin over Ted Cruz, 13 points. Is there still an opportunity for somebody to rise?
Oh, absolutely. The national polls aren't what counts now. If you go 4 years ago, just about this time, Gingrich was doing pretty well. And you have to realize then the Iowa caucus was on January 3rd. So you have to take it back.
Okay, so if somebody else does make a move, Chairman, who would it be?
Well, it could be actually any one of the candidates who are on that main stage.
All right, get in here. Get in here, Webb.
So let's do politics.
All right.
What I do, politics by the numbers.
Yeah, we both do.
All right. There's 10% or so of the voting base that's not even involved in this in the Republican primary right now. That's typical. 40% evangelicals. Those guys have. We have two tiers effectively right now, if you want to take the polls. You've got the Trump-Cruz top tier. You've got Rubio, Christie, Bush, Kasich, Carson kind of fighting it out for the rest. And that's what's happening. But that second tier is going to fall off, and their people have to go somewhere. We're really seeing the development out of Sandra's debate and Neil and Maria's debate and Trish, let's not forget Trish, that we're seeing two tiers develop. But they're going to have to move somewhere by the time we get to South Carolina.
Dave, you have to realize 4 years ago, Gingrich was supposed to.
That's the issue.
Wait, you just got you did all that and you got the same answer.
8 years ago, it was Rudy Giuliani. He was wiping the floor with that logic.
Chairman, let me just throw this in here.
You had 10 minutes already to ask the question.
The question is what happens if the top tier no longer is from then who comes up from the bottom?
This electorate has changed since 4 years ago. With the start of the Tea Party movement, the populism that has changed, people's eyes are more open. It's not solely responsible. But look, I just spent time with a couple thousand people in South Carolina, activists from Georgia, Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, and they're looking at this going, we've changed, and now we want more than just, this was what happened years ago and should happen.
Well, but that is just that's what's happened historically, and I sort of believe in looking historically. You see, it's probably going to happen again. I think you're going to see all the polls tighten. I think you see what happens in New Hampshire, and Senator, all about.
It's not over, as you know. This is a long process. And speaking of any of the candidates, you have some that are prepared to be in it for the long haul. You have others that they're banking on Iowa and New Hampshire, period. And if they don't do well, they're gone. Yep. And that'll shrink the numbers. And I think we'll have a more realistic really a more realistic take on what the real poll numbers are. But as you know, let me ask you a question. Do you think this is going to be resolved by the convention or not?
Yes. I think it will be a contested first round, the first ballot, and it will be decided on the first ballot. But going into that first ballot, it will be contested. It's not going to be the kind of brokered convention that people say. It will be contested on the first ballot.
And by the way, I say this to the American people, learn the difference in the rules between contested and brokered. Exactly. But I have another quick question. 95 delegates in New York. It's a delegate fight. And that's what's happening in a lot of these states.
I'm looking for a lot of candidates remaining after the Super Tuesday on March 15th, because we are the big primary after that, and there's 5 weeks before.
April's a long
We're the
way.
only primary on April 19th, and I think New York could, for the first time in a long period of time, the Republican Party is going to help decide who the President of the United States is going to be.
Where is party support for Donald Trump right now?
It's really across the board. It's not just the very conservatives and also moderates. His strength appeals to people. He is winning on personality, which gives him a lot of flexibility with respect to issues. With respect to Ted Cruz, he's winning on issues, and he's locked into those
And real
issues.
quick, what do you make of Hillary Clinton sliding in the polls up against Bernie Sanders?
Here we go again.
No. I'm telling you right now, America, listen to me. Bernie Sanders is the closest thing to a modern-day McGovern, who couldn't win his home state, won Massachusetts. Bernie Sanders could win Iowa and New Hampshire. He's not a factor. He's a farce. If Hillary Clinton, barring any other change, is the
David, I
nominee.
disagree with this feels like 64 or like 72.
No, it doesn't. I got to tell you, Bernie Sanders is not a factor. It's a lot of energy. It's good for the pundit class.
I see there's
He's
so
not
much,
a factor
there's
against
so
Hillary.
much energy on the Republican side here that this is the year when the Democratic Party goes to its heart. Just like the Republican Party did in 64 and the Democratic Party did in 72 with McGovern.
Could we have a more constructive, lively discussion next time? Oh, no, we're going to have to separate you two. All right. Thank you so much, Ed Cox,
Pleasure to
for
be with
joining
you.
us this morning. Good stuff. Still to